to me, as somebody that really enjoys guns, I enjoy shooting and it's really fun. All of the gunplay in Battlefield games is hysterically inaccurate. I mean, like when you eject a magazine, for instance, you can reload another mag without ever having to take the bullets out of the last one. There are a lot of guns that have clips, and you can throw in a new clip and it just adds bullets to the current one, even though that's not possible. In a lot of Battlefield compilations, I personally don't fly jets, but I'm pretty sure you can't do a loop-de-loop in a jet, jump out of it, rocket launcher somebody, and then jump back into the jet. I don't think you can do that in real life. It seems like nobody has problems with all of these historical inaccuracies, or at least things that I assume to be historically inaccurate. Again, I'm not a historian, but when there's like a woman with a prosthetic that might have a little bit too much functionality, like why is this such a problem? I guess like my question is, and also like this idea about like, well, there are Russian snipers. I'm sure there was at least a few women that fought in combat roles on the Western Front. I mean, maybe not full battalions, and it definitely wasn't anywhere near 50-50 or whatever, but like it only takes a couple. And even if I were to grant that extreme argument and say there were none, why does it matter? Like we make so many sacrifices in video games, and again, anybody that's ever played with real guns will tell you immediately that the gunplay in 99% of games outside of like fucking Arma is horrendously unrealistic, but that's okay. Nobody wants to sit there and fuck around with a magazine for 5 minutes before you're ready to slap it in and go back into combat. Nobody wants to do shit like that. So if we make sacrifices like this all the time to make games more enjoyable and more playable, I don't know what the big deal is about having like a woman in a game that might make more women interested in playing the game. I don't see why that's a huge deal.
Well, it's not a huge deal for me because I'm not a major Battlefield fan. I've always been more for Call of Duty, and there are tons and tons of women in Call of Duty. You play as them, and they kill people. It's fine, but that's what people are saying about Battlefield 5. I mean, I don't say I 100% agree with them, but they don't like the fact that it's historically. I wouldn't even say inaccurate because obviously it's inaccurate. I mean, you can't really fly a jet in a battlefield like that, like how you described. But at the same time, it's weird. It's jarring playing the game, and you're fighting on the front lines of Normandy or whatever the hell, and you hear a woman crying. Like women are getting stabbed, they're getting shot, and that's like personally when I tried to play Battlefield 5, that was the thing that sort of like knocked me out of it. I was like, okay, this isn't Call of Duty. First of all, it's supposed to be World War II. The theater is set in Normandy or something.
So you're on Normandy. You get shot 7 times. You take cover behind something. You regenerate all of your life instantly. You do a power slide over to the next piece of cover. You kill 35 German soldiers. You get killed once. You respawn, and then you replay that part. But then you hear a woman crying. It's like, oh God, my immersion is broken. Does this really happen?
I think for a lot of people it does, yeah. It's weird. I don't know. I won't say they're sexist or anything, but it's the expectation of it. Maybe it's because we watch a lot of World War II movies, we watch Band of Brothers, and there's very few women in those movies. You see them in roles as like a nurse, a combat nurse or something, but never are they on the front line. So when you see something in World War II,
as well, though. Like the combat in those movies is very, very different than what you see going on in Battlefield and Call of Duty games. Yeah, well, at least like Band of Brothers.
It's a weird thing, right? It's like the suspension of disbelief. Like you can like when you watch a realistic movie, you never see the character take a shit, right? You never see him take a piss, but you kind of assume that that's what happens. So like when you're playing, I don't know if this is like the best example, but when you're playing Battlefield, certain things you can sort of like give it some leeway. You're like, yeah, okay, this is not realistic, but whatever. This is just a thing. It's a game thing. But then when you hear other things, so it's a thematic thing. It's a bit like seeing maybe a guy ride in with a sword. Like say a guy rides in with a Team Fortress 2 style sword and shield, and he's swinging at people. You're like, okay, well, this game's not realistic to begin with, but then having that dude that just kind of throws you in for a loop. Maybe it's like that, There's an extent to which you accept what is unrealistic and what's not.
I feel like having a guy roll in with like a TF2 style sword and just having the skins of one of the characters and the voices be female, I feel like these are pretty extensively different things. I don't know. I guess it's just for games like this, I just don't see the big deal in swapping out a couple of textures if it gets more women and shit involved in games. I don't know. It just seems like an overwhelmingly positive thing to me. If I was playing like a hardcore, so I would be much more lenient in games like, say, Arma, because these are games that are literal fucking military sims, and these games go very fucking hard. Jesus Christ, Arma 3's engine is insane for how hard they go when they're trying to strive for like this authenticity. Maybe in games like that, I would totally buy it if fans were talking about realism and whatnot. But Battlefield games are incredibly fantastical. The gameplay is getting closer and closer to what Call of Duty always has been. It's very fast, it's very quick. You carry around guns and you shoot instantly and everything. Like, I don't know. It just seems weird that these games are so far removed from any sort of historical element, save from the names of some places. but then all of a sudden like the characters all have to be male. What I'm basically getting at is it feels like the argument that it has to be historical, this argument seems a little facetious. It's not like the real argument being made. It seems like the actual argument is that we're just kind of uncomfortable still having women like in fighting related games. That's what it feels like to me, just because I just don't buy the historical argument at all.
Let me ask you a question, Ian.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
what's up?
Sort of on this same page. Do you think that women are over sexualized in games today?
Japanese games maybe, yeah, but not American games. No.
You'd agree with that, Destiny?
That's a really, really hard one. I think it's gotten what Ian said, like games as of recent are the games over the past like 5 years, even just 5 years, have been much different than the games, like 10 or 15 years ago. Talking about like over sexualization is a really hard topic to go into. Like, I don't think that sexual characters are ever necessarily bad, but it seems like if it's done, I want to say like in a very strange sense, it kind of makes me wonder. So like a game that I really loved was Nier Automata. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this game, but it's like a Japanese RPG
fantastic,
game.
Yeah. She's sexualized, but it's okay, right? It's like sort of it works. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel cheap. Yeah. It doesn't feel like fan service.
Oh, I don't know. I kind of felt the opposite on that one. I felt like everything in the game was like ultra super serious, but then for some reason, there's like 15 different panty shots in the game, and it kind of felt a little weird. Like that actually took me out of it a little bit, where I was like, I'm climbing a ladder, and if I angle the joystick wrong, like I'm getting a huge shot full of like 2B ass. I don't know. It just felt like kind of strange. But if you're playing like Dead or Alive beach volleyball, or if you're playing like hyper fantastical games like say like League of Legends, where all the males are like hyper mascularized and all of the females are hyper feminized, it's like in those cases, yeah, it's whatever, that's probably fine. But yeah.
Okay. Steve, you wanted to ask something?
Sure. How much consideration should these companies that produce these games have in regards to one, the constituents of base players, the ones that actually buy the games, right? They're the ones that are going to be purchasing. That's the bottom line. But at the same time, we all recognize there's a lot of female gamers. As a matter of fact, they're some of the best gamers happen to be female. So if they're want to have, as you guys were arguing, skins that are female, or females back in Germany way before that most of them would have been ever kind of militarized. What is the considerations that these companies should have to allow for these things and take them into account, even though we agree it ruins some of the immersion, but is it really a big deal if the bottom line is who's buying this product?
Well, I think that the developers should just make whatever it is they want to make, whether it caters to one group or another. It doesn't matter. It's up to the developer, right? If the developer wants to make it so that there are women in his game, by all means, do it. If anyone doesn't want to buy it, then, well, they don't have to buy it. But the developer needs to recognize that if he's making like an original product, like something that is wholly original, 100% his, then yeah, he can do whatever he wants. But if he is catering to a franchise, one that's established, that has certain themes in it, and he wants to make it completely different, then that's a mistake, right? That's a company's failing for hiring this guy or for allowing him this much freedom. So I do think that, there are some market considerations to be made. There cannot be like too much freedom because of the expectations. And, it's like if you take Battlefield 5 or whatever, and you decide, yeah, I'm going to make this game 100% Call of Duty. This completely goes against what fans of Battlefield 5 are expecting, or Battlefield in general. And so they won't buy the game because it's too much at Call of Duty. And that is a problem with a lot of franchises, where they try to be like another type of game, a different game, and then they don't really succeed at it because they're not good at it. So there are considerations to be made. But I think that in terms of like politics and whether it's bringing in more women, the market, I mean, the data still needs to come in, but Battlefield 5 is not selling very well. It's selling at like less than half of what Battlefield 1, which is the previous game, sold. So I don't think that this whole thing really paid off for them. So it might not be a good idea after all.
Destiny?
So this is a really, really hard question. What you're essentially asking is, do companies have a responsibility to public discourse, which is so fucking hard. So say, for instance, you have a market where you could double the sales of a game by being racially derogatory. And now you're asking the company, well, should you publish a game that you feel like is socially responsible, or one that will maximize profit for the owners of your company? That's a really hard question to answer. Ethically or morally, I would like to say that you should I think as a company, you should be exuding the values that you feel are important as a company. So if you're a company and literally your goal is like, we don't give a fuck about anything, we just want to make a fuck ton of money. Well, in that case, you'd probably be making mobile games. But I mean, then go ahead and like do whatever you want. But I guess if you're of the mindset or the feeling that, well, hey, all of us exist in a society. At the end of the day, you know, this is where we kind of make our beds. We are in a position where we can have a massive influence over society because media definitely does. And it creates a lot of feedback loops there as well. For instance, a lot of movies with lead female antagonists will probably create more women that are interested in watching movies with lead female antagonists, you know, and that kind of feeds into itself. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess I can't, again, I would like to say that every company should push the values that it feels, you know, it most identifies with. Obviously, I can't force anybody to do that, but that would kind of be my opinion. And then obviously, you know, never at a detriment to the content. But yeah.
So would you a combination? Well, it's a combination there of the market, right, the demand, and their own efficacy issues of the company making these things, right? Would you agree there's some kind of symbiosis between the two, and they have a line to walk? I'm not going to say there's a hard line of demarcation between them, because obviously, as you said, if they produce a video game that is completely off the rails, that is derogatory, racist, sexist, I mean, without question, then of course people are not going to buy that. As a matter of fact, there's going to be a backlash to that, I would imagine, right?
These days,
so I think that, yeah, of course, and there should be, of course, there should be. So I think it's a fine line that they have to walk on that. Yeah, I would hope so as well.
We had a discussion. It was actually after you were on last time, Ian, in an after show. I believe Rags was. You weren't here for that, but I think Rags was, and there was a conversation that took place between Rags and someone else in the call, and it stemmed off of the question: should game developers or the people who develop games have full reign over their content, be able to make, you know, any type of, you know, game that they want without any type of pressure or censorship from the outside? So the example that was brought up was, what if a developer wanted to create a rape simulation game? Should that be something that should be able to go to market? And it stemmed off into several different and it went to several different rabbit holes, but it was a good conversation. So I want to see what your opinion is on that. If a company wanted to create that, should they be allowed to do so?
Well, they should be allowed to do so, but other companies, the platforms, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox Live, they are under no obligation to carry these products. So, you know, you deal with it, right? You make a trashy product, one that has that's like a rape simulation. You have to market it yourself, you know, sell it on your own site. But don't be surprised when Steam says, no, we're not going to host this thing.
Okay. And what do you think, Destiny?
I mean, I'm pretty hard on this. Like, or this is a hard line. Like, I mean, I would be the creation of any sort of art. I don't think you should ban somebody from being allowed to make something. That's a pretty hard no for me. And that you shouldn't be able to keep somebody from making something. But then, you know, like Ian said, you obviously no store or anybody would be compelled to carry it or sell it.
So that when it comes to the freedom.
I was going to say, just as somebody that studied art, I think it's very scary when you get into scenarios where you're like trying to limit what kind of creation of art or whatever. Like, that's very scary to me. Yeah. There you go.
Yes. The freedom of speech issue would be, and I'm agreeing with you here, anybody has a right to make any game they want. Steam has a right not to have it on their platform.
Yeah.
Would you agree
exactly.
with that? Okay.
I mean, it's the defense of ugly art, right? You can write anything you want. You can write a rape fiction about a real life person. You're allowed to do that, but don't be surprised when you stop getting jobs, you stop getting work, your publisher doesn't call you anymore because he thinks you're fucking creepy. You know, those are the social repercussions, but absolutely you can do that. You can be Vox Day. Go ahead and be a complete racist, you know, say all the nasty things you want, but don't be surprised when no one wants to work with you.
So it seems like we're doing we're doing a lot of agreeing. So I'm just going to ask this question. What was it last time between the two that caused the fireworks? What was the issue at hand that created what we saw in that last debate?
Oh God.
Dumpster fire.
Remembers it better than I do.
You know what? Against my better judgment, because I'm 99% sure that Ian is going to call me a pedophile at least one time after this conversation. Against my better judgment,
I won't.
I
promise you I won't.
It, okay?
I promise you I won't. Yeah, I won't.
Okay.
So what was the issue at hand? What was the topic for that evening?
Ian, you can go